Thank you, Sean. Appreciate it very much. Well, this next fella, I'm proud to say he shares my barber. Apparently. We have the same style. He is Jennifer Lovejoy's partner in crime on their popular podcast, Atheists on Air. Cash Wilson is a father of 9. 9. One more time, 9. He's a father of 9, raised in the Mormon church. At age 35, in an effort to become a full-time minister, he read the Bible, cover to cover, twice. Cash spent the next 3 years attempting to rationalize the contradictions that existed in what should be the best book on the planet. At age 38, which apparently he hasn't reached yet, because I've heard him tell people he's still 28. He denounced any belief in God or gods and spent his free time in educating others. As I've already mentioned, Cash co-hosts Atheists on Air, a syndicated podcast that can be heard worldwide. But be warned, he proudly wears that explicit tag and will say a bad word or two. But the show is extremely funny and very educational. It is definitely worth checking out. Cash is also the vice president of the Western North Carolina Humanist and encourages friendly debate. And finally, as his ChristianMingle.com profile states, he enjoys bourbon and loves long walks on nude beaches. Ladies and gentlemen, Cash.
Well, you can tell everybody. Yeah, you can tell everybody. Go ahead and tell everybody. I'm the man, I'm the man, I'm the man. Yes, I am, yes, I am, yes, I am. I'm the man, I'm the man, I'm the man. I believe every lie.
That song reminds me when I was a Christian. I was a fundamentalist Christian, and as some of you know, that when you're a fundamentalist Christian, you're the man of your house. My older kids, I've got 4 daughters that 2 are in college, 2 are out of college already, and 6 of our 9 are girls. And so I always knew growing up that men were over women. They were the head of the house. And so that's why I chose that. It was less of an ego thing than it was as an example. But I figured I better explain that, because otherwise I needed to walk with a swag up here if I was going to claim that song as mine. You mentioned that your dad, Sean, had you go to the library. I was telling my wife when you said that, my dad did as well. And my kids today complain when I say Google is your friend. And they think that's hard work. They'll ask me something, Google is your friend. I didn't bring my talk, and so Love, or Jennifer as she's known to some, allowed me to use her little iPad, and I emailed it to her so that I could do this. But I also broke my glasses, so my bifocals, so this is my backup pair and don't have bifocals. So this is going to be interesting. But how does state church separation benefit you? Yes, even you, the most devout Christians, are benefited from our founding fathers' stance on the separation of church and state. Some will immediately but wrongfully claim that America is a Christian nation. And I can relate. I grew up in the deep South. I learned the same values, if you want to call them values. My circle of friends and family were all Christians, and I can remember the mantra of my father. The problem started when we took God out of the schools and we stopped kids from praying. My dad still repeats these words. I repeated these sentiments well into my 30s and indoctrinated my children similarly. I don't have time to address everything here today, but remember, if I say something that you don't agree with, Google is your friend. No one is stopped, and nor is there a law in this country that prevents a child from praying at school. Nope, the only prayers that were stopped were the prayers that were endorsed, forced, or encouraged by the staff, teachers, and administrators. Basically, people hired by the state. A child can pray at school as long as it doesn't disrupt or interrupt the class, even to this day. The United States Constitution is a secular document. There are no mentions of God or Christianity. The First Amendment states that Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. The Constitution makes no reference to God in the presidential oath, and nor does it require or suggest a Bible be used. Our first treaty, the Treaty of Tripoli, was signed in 1797, just 20 years after our nation's founding. And it states the government of the United States is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion. If we are a Christian nation, why doesn't any of our founding documents say so? Why is Jesus, God, or Christianity painfully absent? You may argue that the words wall of separation does not appear in the Constitution, and you'd be correct. It also doesn't exact the words right to privacy, separation of powers, or interstate commerce. But we know from the writings of the Founding Fathers and from the Supreme Court decisions what each truth is. Thomas Jefferson wrote to the Danbury Baptists after they requested clarification on the First Amendment. And you mentioned this just a minute ago. And he responded to him, he said that the legitimate powers of government reach actions only and not opinions. I contemplate with sovereign reverence that the act of the whole America people, which declared that their legislature should make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, thus building a wall of separation between church and state. He said that. That's his words. Imagine now that you find yourself living in a state that is predominantly Catholic, Hindu, Jewish, Mormon, or Muslim, while you are a Baptist. The wall of separation prevents the government of your city, county, state, or nation from enacting laws that restrict your rights under the wall of separation. Imagine, if you will, that you live in Provo, Utah, which its LDS Mormon citizenship make up roughly 95% of its population. You send your children to school and find quotes from the Book of Mormon or other religious doctrine that are contradictory to the things that you would want taught to your Christian children. How would this make you feel? Imagine going to the city council meeting and finding that the majority of officials hold strong opinions against your particular brand of faith. Do you think you'd get a fair shake? Well, I can attest you don't. You can probably attest you don't. Time and time again, zealous religious leaders in a majority position have abused their power to restrict those in the minority. Our founding fathers feared this from the beginning due to the established religions of the time and their incessant bickering and fighting over who had God's words right. The separation of church and state prevents a majority. It prevents a majority rule. It prevents the Catholics up north from controlling and restricting the rights of the Baptists. It empowers Jews in Utah and protects their rights. We are one nation under a constitution. The Bill of Rights protects the minority from a majority. It ensures we all enjoy the same liberties and freedoms. Beginning in the 1950s, the wall of separation between the church and the state began to be eroded by religious leaders who enjoyed political status. In the 1950s, almost 2 centuries after our founding fathers established our rights to worship any God or no God, according to our own will, these religious zealots at the time broke the law. We changed our national motto to "In God We Trust." We glorified God on our money and we added Him to the pledge. These changes due to the Red Scare, the McCarthy era, when it was thought that there was a communist hiding under every bed. In these days, the Christian God began being forced upon all Americans, Jewish Americans, Muslim Americans, and others. And ever since then, the wall of separation has been chinked away at by different sects of Christianity. It is your sacred right as a parent to indoctrinate and teach your child to believe and worship in whatever God or gods you choose. Our government, whether federal or local, nor the school system, has the power to infringe upon these rights. You should not have to worry that your son's Mormon teacher is encouraging him to read the Book of Mormon, that your daughter's principal is encouraging group meetings about Islam, nor should your church be ostracized by the local government because its beliefs are contrary to the majority census. You are free to worship any and all gods as you see fit, and the First Amendment guarantees your rights. As long as your beliefs don't infringe on the rights of others, you can feel free to worship a pine tree if you like, without the fear of infringement. You can teach your children that science is bad and that the invisible fairy lives on the dark side of the moon and will torment them forever if they don't believe. That's what the wall of separation grants you. Thank you.